Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Martello. We're going to do some monitoring progress questions from section 9.4, which is completing the square. So this is our textbook. This is the actual book, but you can go and look on the online textbook if you want to follow along with what I'm talking about. So for completing the square, we're going to start with an expression that's x squared plus bx. We want to add a constant term c to make the expression into a perfect square trinomial. And by finding that c term and adding it to the expression, that process is called completing the square. So in order to find that c, this is the formula that we really want to use to find the c. We're going to take the b, which is the coefficient on the x term, divide it by 2 and square it. So I'm just going to kind of take some notes here on my paper. These are the monitoring progress questions we're going to do. And again, we're creating the perfect square trinomial x squared plus bx plus c. And this c term is what we're really going to start by finding, where c is equal to the quantity of b over 2 squared. So this is a formula that we want to definitely remember or keep in mind, because we're going to continue to use that to find our c term here to complete the square. Okay, let's get started. We're going to do these monitoring progress questions. So if you'd like a quick review, you can look over example 1. We're going to do the problems that are just like example 1. I'm going to start with monitoring progress 1. And let me write down the problem here. We have x squared plus 10x. So this is our original format, this x squared plus bx term, and now we want to find c. So basically, I want to find out what c is by using the formula that we just said. We're going to do c equals the quantity of b over 2 squared. Let's plug our b in. I know that in this expression, our b is 10. Let's plug it in. So we're going to have 10 over 2 squared. I'm going to follow the order of operations, do the parentheses first, so I get 5 squared, which is 25. So now let's take this 25 and let's add it into our expression where the c goes. So now I have x squared plus 10x plus 25, and I just completed the square because now this expression is a perfect square trinomial. Remember, a perfect square trinomial has to have the first term is a perfect square, the last term is a perfect square, and this middle term has to be that 2ab. Remember, so this has to be 2 times the square root of the first term times the square root of the last term, which is 25. So 2 times the square root of x squared is x, times the square root of 25 is 5. Yeah, 2 times x times 5 is 10x. So I did just create this perfect square trinomial. Okay, my next step now is I'm going to factor this perfect square trinomial. So first the directions say complete the square, then we're going to factor. So we're going to use our factoring of perfect square trinomial methods. And remember to do that, when I factor, I'm going to set up 1 parentheses squared. I'm going to take the square root of the first term, which is x. I'm going to take the symbol from the middle term here, which is a plus. And I'm going to take the square root of the last term, which is 5. And here it is, x plus 5 quantity squared is our expression factored. Okay, let's do another one just like that. We're going to do number 2. So in number 2, I'm getting this from our book, Monitoring Progress 2, x squared minus 4x. Okay, again, our first step is we're going to find the c, and we're going to use the formula to find the c, which is b over 2, the quantity squared. Our b in this expression is negative 4. Make sure you use negative 4. So we're going to have negative 4 over 2 squared. Let's divide first to get negative 2 squared, and this becomes positive 4. So this 4 is going to be our c. Let's rewrite the expression with the c included. So x squared minus 4x plus our new c that we just found is 4. And we just completed the square because now this is a perfect square trinomial. We can double check. Is x squared a perfect square? Yes. Is 4 a perfect square? Yep. And is this middle term, ignoring the minus, is this equal to 2 times the square root of x squared is x, times the square root of 4 is 2? Yeah, this is 2 times x times 2 is 4x. So that is a perfect square trinomial. Now let's factor this expression. So we're gonna set up 1 parentheses squared. We're gonna square root the first term, take the symbol from the middle term, and square root the last term. So this factors to x minus 2 squared. And that's our answer to this question. So if you notice something that's happening here, if you actually leave this number, this -2, that -2 is what actually goes into the parentheses here. So if you left it unsquared, if you didn't square that number here, that is ending up what's inside of here. Same thing here. The number that before you square it, the 5, that's the number that ends up in the parentheses. Just something to notice. Okay, we're gonna keep going here. Let's take a look at some more practice problems. And now we're gonna follow example 2 from the book. And we're gonna start solving by completing the square. So when we solve by completing the square, we always have to start with the correct form of the equation. So this is the form that we need, x squared plus bx equals d. So I'm gonna write that down here because that's really important that we start with the correct form. The form that is needed is x squared plus bx equals d. So that means that on the left side, we can only have an x squared and a bx. There cannot be a number in front of the x squared term, and there cannot be anything after the bx term. So this is what we need to start with, and it has to be equal to some number over here. Now we're gonna solve this equation for x by completing the square. So if you want to do a quick reminder, you should look in the textbook and you can follow along example 2. I'm gonna do some monitoring progress questions like example 2. So I'm gonna go down here and let's take a look at number 5. We're gonna do number 4. So let me write down number 4, x squared minus 2x equals 3. Okay, we're gonna solve by completing the square. We're gonna start off the exact same way that we did from before. I need to find the c. Now the c is going to be added right here after this minus 2x term in order to complete the square and make this left side a perfect square trinomial. But remember that whenever you have an equation, you can't just add something to one side of the equation, it becomes unbalanced. So if I add something to the left side, I need to add something to the right side as well. So really, I'm looking for x squared minus 2x plus something equals 3 plus something. So both of these are gonna be the c that I'm looking for. So this is gonna be plus c, and this is gonna be plus c. We're gonna find that c and we're gonna plug it in. Okay, so let's find the c that we can plug into this equation. Again, we're gonna use the formula. C equals the quantity of b over 2 squared. Our b in our equation is the coefficient on the x term, which is -2. Let's plug that in. So we're gonna have -2 over 2 squared. We're gonna divide first to get -1 squared. And -1 squared is +1. There's our c. And let's add this 1 to both of these spots here. Let's rewrite our equation. So now I'm gonna have x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 3 plus 1. So again, all I did was add 1 to both sides of this equation, but now look at this left side. This left side is now a perfect square trinomial. My next step is now I'm gonna factor this left side. Let's factor, and then over here we can just combine like terms. We'll just add these numbers together. Okay, when we factor, remember I'm gonna set up 1 parentheses squared. I'm gonna take the square root of the first term, take the symbol from the middle term, and take the square root of the last term. This becomes x minus 1 squared equals, add these two together, we get 4. Okay, now we're ready to actually solve for x. So now my next step is I'm going to solve using square roots. In order to get to this x inside of this parentheses, I need to get rid of the square on the outside of the parentheses. So I'm going to solve using square roots. And this is from section 9.3 that we just did prior to this section. Sorry, 9.3. All right, so my next step is now let's actually get rid of the square here, and I'm gonna take the square root of both sides, and it's gonna cancel out the square. Let's take the square root of this side as well, because it's an equation. Whatever I do the left side, I have to do the right side. So now on the left side, I'm left with x minus 1. All that happened was that this square canceled out, is equal to, and then don't forget when you take the square root of 4, it's positive and negative. So we want plus or minus 2. Now this is where we're going to end up getting 2 answers to our equation. So from here, I like to actually split this up and solve our 2 equations separately, but you can kind of do however you'd like to do it best. So I know that this really means x minus 1 is equal to positive 2, and x minus 1 is really equal to negative 2. So x minus 1 equals positive and negative 2. Let's solve these both for x. Add 1 to both sides, I get x equals 3. That would be my first answer. And then add 1 to both sides, I get x equals negative 1, and that would be my second answer. Okay, and this is the end of this question. This is, I know, a lot of steps that we need to remember, but they're all good steps that we need to make sure that we do them in the correct order, and we are capable of doing each individual step. It's just a matter of putting them all together. So if I wanted to check my answer, all I would have to do is take each of these individually and plug them in for the x's into our original equation, and it should end up being equal. Let's do a quick check. If I plug in 3, 3 squared is 9, and then 2 times 3 is 6, 9 minus 6 is 3. Let's check negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. So this is 1 plus 2 is 3. So these both work in our answer here. They're both correct. Okay, we're going to keep going. Let's do one more of these practice problems, and we're going to take a look at example 3. So in example 3, this is when we're starting off with the wrong form. So remember what we said from the beginning, we need to start with the correct form here. I'm going to turn my paper over so that we can work with what we are doing in example 3. So again, just to remind you, we need the form x squared plus bx equals d. So if there is an a in front of our x squared, we have to get rid of it. If there is a c being added at the end, we have to get rid of it. Technically, it doesn't matter which one you get rid of first, but I think it's easier to eliminate the c first and then to eliminate the a. So I'm going to say that here. So first, we want to eliminate the c. And you would do that by either adding or subtracting it to both sides. Then second, we're going to eliminate the a. When we do that, because a is being multiplied by x squared, we're going to divide the entire equation by a. So you divide everything. The entire equation gets divided by a. Okay, we're going to take a look at number 6. I don't think we really need to do number 5. We're going to do monitoring progress number 6 here. Let's write down the equation. 3g squared minus 24g plus 27 equals 0. Now, this is standard form of a quadratic expression, but it's not in the form that I need for completing the square. I only want the x squared term, so I don't want this 3 in the front, and I just want to have plus bx at the end here. I don't want to have the c, so I don't want to have this 27. Let's get rid of both of those. First, we're going to eliminate the c. So since this is our a, b, c, let's get rid of that c first. We're going to subtract 27 from both sides. We get 3g squared minus 24g equals negative 27. Okay, our next step is now we're going to get rid of the 3 in front of this g squared. And in order to do that, I'm going to divide by 3. But I need to divide everything in the whole equation. This gets divided by 3 and this gets divided by 3. Every single thing gets divided by 3. Let's write our new equation. We have g squared minus 8g equals negative 9. Now, this is the correct form. X squared plus bx equals d. G squared minus 8g equals negative 9. We have the right form. Let's get ready to find our c. So remember, I want to add the c over here to the left side, and I'm going to add the c over here to the right side. Let's find the c. So for our c, we're going to follow the formula b over 2 squared. Our new b is this term right here. This is the new b that we want to use, negative 8. Let's plug that in. So we have negative 8 over 2 squared. This becomes negative 4 squared, which is 16. Okay, we're going to add 16 to both sides of the equation after this negative 8g and after this negative 9. Our new equation is g squared minus 8g plus 16 equals negative 9 plus 16. Okay, on the left side, this is now a perfect square trinomial. So now we're going to factor this left side, and this right side, we're going to add the numbers together. So let's factor. Square root the first term, take the symbol from the middle, square root the last term, and we get the quantity of g minus 4 squared equals, let's add these two numbers together, so I would get 7. Okay, now we're ready to actually solve for g. So in order to solve for g, I have to get rid of this square. In order to get rid of the square, I'm going to square root both sides to cancel out the square. Square root the left side and square root the right side. On the left side, all that happens is the square canceled out and I just am left with g minus 4. On the right side, 7 is not a perfect square. So from here, we could keep it square root of 7 or we can round it. But don't forget that the square root of 7 is really the positive and negative. So we can keep it as plus or minus square root of 7, or I can put it into my calculator and turn it into a decimal. And it all depends on how you are going to prefer to write your answer. So let's make it a decimal here just so we can have both. And I'm gonna round to the hundredths place. So we'll do 2.65. But again, don't forget it's plus or minus positive and negative 2.65. Okay, I'm gonna split this up into my two equations and solve. So I'm gonna take my g minus 4, it's gonna be equal to positive 2.65, and g minus 4 is gonna equal negative 2.65. Let's solve both of these equations. We're gonna add 4 to both sides. So we get g equals 6.65. And over here, again, we're gonna add 4 to both sides. And let's get our answer for this one. So negative 2.65 plus 4 is 1.35. And those are our two answers for this. Remember, you can check your answer for this by taking your g's and plugging them back into the original equation, and it should work out. Just remember that you rounded these numbers, so when you plug them back in up here, it'll be approximately 0. It won't come out to be exactly 0 because you rounded, but it should be approximately 0. I hope you found this video helpful. We're going to do a real-world example next.